Welcome back to the Love the Game Forum. It's said that repeat success is the hardest thing to do in sport, but across an era at Geelong, they have normalised success and stayed in contention, defying the gravity of the AFL system. These are the Chris Scott eras. It is the defining achievement of this time. So, when the topic is consistency and maintaining success, we couldn't be in better hands. Chris Scott, welcome.
Thanks, Jared. Good to be with you.
What are the tangibles that you could share around that notion of maintaining success?
Well, I think there are the obvious things, Jared, around planning, preparation, the build of your list, staying up with the game, making sure that you're not only playing a sustainable game, but also coaching it and educating it as well. I think they are obvious to most people, and while I say they're obvious, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're easy. But I think the thing that I would focus on the most, that may be a little less obvious, is just the notion of creating a really positive environment for everyone. We fundamentally believe at the Cats, and I suspect this goes for most sporting environments, if not business environments as well, that if your people are happy and engaged in the rest of their lives, and they bounce into work looking forward to each day, that correlates with performance. It doesn't guarantee it necessarily. And there's always a natural tension there between high performance and pushing standards and pushing people to be better tomorrow than they are today. But we just believe that if underpinning all of that people are happy, it will contribute to that success. So again, that sounds a little bit easier to say than it is to do. But I think that's the key in consistency. The thing, you can certainly get short-term gains by pushing people really hard. Another example might be if you want complete compliance in a certain area. For example, you want to make sure that all your players are absolutely on time for a meeting. You can threaten to fine them, and they'll almost certainly be on time to avoid that fine. But over time, does that lead to a positive, engaged, happy environment, or does it lead to an environment that's compliant, but mainly based on fear rather than an inherent desire to improve the place?
So the AFL's a serious business, but there is a correlation. Should winning be fun?
Well, I think it should. I mean, we consistently engage our not only our players but our staff as well. To try to make an assessment on, how they're feeling about things. So the scoreboard's really obvious with us. We have a win-loss that's really easy for everyone to see. Scoreboard within games. So the on-field part's really easy to measure. And typically, if you are winning, then people are enjoying things a lot more. So even when you broaden that conversation to culture, and I'm yet to see a team that consistently finishes in the bottom four, but rates top four in terms of culture and player engagement. So the two things are obviously linked, but one of the things, at least that I try to model as the leader, is trying to sort of remove myself from this notion that winning is a relief and losing is a disaster. You've got to try to find the joy in winning. You don't want it to last too long because it can bleed into, the following week and lead to complacency. But over the course of, I think, a career, if you looked at the majority of times, you'd say, look, they're hard, and but the real highs, the top of the roller coaster, more than make up for the lows. So if you don't enjoy it, I think you are doing yourself a disservice.
Then there's the question of mindset. So I don't use the phrase defying gravity lightly. There's almost, it's almost an imperative, a truth that you can only compete for so long in a communist system. You have defied that. How important is it not to give in to the idea your time competing is finished, it's time to fall?
Well, I think it's a really important message for the players in particular. And we've said it publicly a few times, and we certainly say it internally. At the start of every season, we look our players in the eye and say, we're going to give you every chance to compete at the pointy end of the season. It doesn't guarantee anything necessarily. And it sounds obvious again to say we're going to do everything we can in this moment. But as you say, in a communist environment, that it is very much a handicap, not only over the course of seasons, but every season the draw, for example, is a handicap. You get a better draw if you finish down the bottom of the ladder, a harder draw if you finish up towards the top. So we don't want it to become a weight around the neck of our players that, look, we might be, the longer we stay up there, the harder it's going to get for us. But we do want to approach it as a challenge and say to them, we're having a crack. But the other thing that is really important to us is that we're honest. There's no point saying those things if your actions don't back it up. And we completely understand that there'll come a point in time where we might not be able to say that to our players. We might have to say, okay, we're in a phase now where this is going to be a couple of years where we need to build, and the ultimate success this year may not be our main priority. I'm not looking forward to those times as much.
Underpinning this today, Chris said the theme is love the game, not the odds. So with a focus towards the harm that gambling can do, is that actually an active conversation in your environment with the large group of young men that you lead?
It is. And it's really important to not only me as the coach, but our whole club. We understand the obligations that we have to try to develop good players, but just as importantly, good young men. And there are some real challenges for young people in general. But I think those challenges, particularly as they relate to young men who, in a lot of cases, are making the majority of their lifetime salary in the early part of their career. So, there are some temptations there that can be difficult for young men without much life experience to get their head around. And then that's where our obligation comes in. So fundamental to our philosophy within our program is that, we're not trying to run a really sterile environment where we lecture to the players. We see our role as kind of one of facilitation. We very much feel like the leaders of our organisation work for the players. It's not the other way around, but incumbent on us in our responsibilities to work for them. We're asking them to just think a little bit more about the decisions that they make early. And I think particularly when it comes to gambling, our job is not to say you shouldn't do it, but our job is to make sure they understand how the system works. And in a lot of cases when the system is very much rigged against you, that I think that helps the decision making a bit. So we certainly say don't gamble, but know what you're getting yourself into.
Chris, it's great to get your insights. Thanks for sharing them with us.
Thanks, Jared.
Chris Scott, part of our Love the Game forum. We'll have more next.